they need to do. Today, we are going to talk about calls to action, specifically in social media conversations. How do we get the conversation going? How do we keep the conversation going using calls to action? Now, you might see these talked about as CTAs, right? Calls to action. And I often use the acronym and then forget to explain what it is. But we know that action is where it's at. So when we talk about anything, it doesn't happen unless you actually do something, right? Our clients' job search, even their resume, it's great to have it done, but it doesn't really do you any good unless you take it out into the world and do something with it. And on social media is not any different. But here's the challenge on social media is that we've been told that we shouldn't be salesy. And so when we hear call to action, we automatically think that that means sales. So we don't do it. And then we don't get any conversation going. We don't get any engagement. We don't get any business or any referrals for a job. And so we think social media is not working. But here's what we want to do. Now, calls to action are not just for getting business. Calls to action aren't just for posts. We're going to talk about how you can have a call to action in everywhere across social media and how you want to have that call to action everywhere across social media to have better engagement. Now, I want to remind you that this is not about sales in and of itself. I know many of us are counselors or coaches, and we don't like to think about selling. We like to think about engaging someone or having conversations or finding other people to help. I was on a social media training yesterday, and they were talking about how we provide hope, help one person every day. So if I'm on social media, maybe that's my goal. And, I used to show up here and go live and maybe have one or two people join me. And that was frustrating. But that mindset of why do you join? You join to help one person every day. Why do you post? Why do you comment? Why do you engage at all? Why do you even have a profile up there? If you're in the career space, it's probably because you want to help people. So let's talk about how you can do that in a better way. So again, calls to action, we're going to talk about them, and then we're going to talk about where they fit and how you can use them. So the first thing is that a call to action is not a sales pitch. And that's why we like to talk about a lot of different options. And if you've seen me teach, you know that I like to talk about a menu when we work with our clients, when we even do things for ourselves. We don't want to create a either or black and white kind of situation because that's easy to get into faulty thinking patterns and just do nothing, right? Have you been there before? Hit me a little drop note in the chat if you've been there before, where you make something into an all or nothing or black and white, and suddenly you're doing nothing because your only choice is something you're not interested in. So let's take it out of either a call to action or not and create a little menu of calls to action that you can use in your work. All right. Excellent. Good to see you all. Drop me a note. Let me know if you've been there, turned it into a black and white thing, a yes, either and then you don't do anything because your only other option that's left isn't appealing. We don't have to do that with calls to action. So here are some of our choices. And we're going to talk about 5, and then a little bonus for you that somebody thought they made really cool. And I thought, well, hey, we're coaches. We do that all the time. So that's the secret one that's coming up towards the end. So the first thing is you can simply call people to engage. That is very simple. And we see this in maybe its purest form. I don't love it, but it can work sometimes, where someone just puts agree and a question mark at the end of their post. I think we can be more thoughtful than that as coaches, career professionals. We kind of have great experience in asking powerful questions. So that agree with the question mark at the end of it's a little bit of a cop out, but it illustrates the point perfectly that this call to action is simply an opportunity for someone to engage with your post. Now, when we think about giving a presentation or engaging someone in something like this even, oftentimes presenters don't spend enough time thinking about what questions will we use to engage people. I'd say the same is true for our posts, and I even fall into it myself, where I get a post going and I'm like, oh, where am I going with this? Or what is the question I'm going to ask? And that's really important. It's probably the most important thing is what do you want people to engage with you in a conversation? Not every post is going to be built towards that. But if you're wanting to get more engagement, if you're wanting people to respond, like if you're creating a poll, doesn't have to be specifically a poll to get a call to action like this. You want to think about what type of question would people respond to? How would they want to engage publicly in this conversation. And this is one of the challenges that I see from our coaching standpoint, is that sometimes we ask such a deep question that people aren't going to respond to it online, or we ask a revealing question that people aren't going to respond to online, and then we're frustrated when we don't get an engagement. Now, there might be another purpose for that kind of question. We'll get to that in a minute. But if you really want people to engage on your post, you want to ask a question that they can engage with, that they can respond to. Sometimes even something that will make them look good to respond to. So if you're going to do that kind of call to action for engagement, you really want to think about the question that you use. What question will you use to get people engaged? So go and look at some posts and kind of see what you see in terms of people asking those powerful questions and actually getting people to respond. Be careful, because there's crap out there, right? There's stuff out there where they have a pod, they have an agreement for people to respond. So if you see something and you're like, well, why did that person get all those responses? Just keep moving on and find a post that you think really would align with you and gets the types of responses you would want to get. So that's our first call to action, simply a call to engage on my post. There doesn't have to be anything salesy about it or anything. The next kind of call to action is when you're thinking about a series, or that you're going to have something else coming up on this. And the great example of this is the Geico commercials. I don't know if you've seen that Geico commercial thread where the little cute gecko was going into different situations. And at the end of it, there'd kind of be like a ... right? What's coming next? And you wanted to see what's happening to the gecko next. And there's probably other commercial series or other things where you see, hey, this person's posting a series and I want to see what's coming next. These can work really well, and your call to action is fairly simple. What's watch tomorrow for this, or watch next week for that. Now, these work well if it is something really appealing to your audience. Everything works that well, but if you're going to do a stream, a series, it's going to work the best if you've really thought about what will keep your audience on pins and needles, that they'll want to see what's coming next week. And then you can use that as your call to action. Sometimes you can do this same thing, like check over on Instagram for this. I think one of our colleagues, Carol Parker Walsh, last month was doing a great series where she was posting some of it on LinkedIn, and then I kind of go to Instagram to see the rest of this, which, by the way, if you want to see some of our other videos on these topics, you can go to YouTube. They're all nicely organized and a little easier to search than on LinkedIn. If you go to careertl.com/YouTube, and it's not www, it's just https://careertl.com and then /YouTube. And we've got all of our other content there on these same topics, and it's a little easier to search. So if you have a series and you say, watch for this tomorrow, that's a call to action. You're getting people engaged, you're getting them to come back, you're getting them to pay attention to what you're doing. And it's a great way to do it, again, without feeling salesy or anything like that. The third one is maybe subscribe to my newsletter or get this free download. It's something that's requires a little bit more engagement from your audience. Maybe they have to enter their email, they have to click a link, or very common on YouTube, not as common on LinkedIn, or not YouTube, sorry, Instagram, where people say, comment this and I'll give you that. So it's a more active engagement, and it's a little bit more salesy, if you want to say that. But most of the time people do this when they're giving something away, or when they are going to have you like give your email and you get a free download or register for my newsletter or whatever. Now, this piece of it, again, it's really got to be compelling if you're going to do this. Do you have something that people really want? And do you give them enough ways to get it? So the comment thing on LinkedIn doesn't work as well as Instagram because it's just not the culture. And so on LinkedIn, I might say, see this link and get the thing, or message me and get this thing. And that can work a little bit better than the comment in the threads for LinkedIn. Again, you're going to see a lot of people be successful with it, and you want to dissect that. What's going on? Why are so many people responding? With a little bit of a caveat that, again, you have some people that are doing this and their engagement isn't as real as it looks like. So just be thoughtful of that, careful of that. Everyone, so we've gone through 3 calls to action. Which one do you think you'd use so far? Could you see yourself using an engagement call to action? Could you see yourself using a follow me, see the next thing, kind of a series? So we call that series. We'll call that one a series. So could you see engagement, series, or lead magnet? Drop me a note in the chat. Could you see yourself using any of those, engagement, series, or lead magnet? Do any of those resonate with you in terms of calls to action that you could use? Now, the next one might be go and see something else. So go and view my article here. Go and read this here. Now, the challenge with these ones is that you really can't tell if the person did it or not. And if you require them to go read something before they comment, you're likely to really cut down on the number of comments that you get. Might try a poll, engagement, excellent, thank you, engagement. Yeah, that's the easiest one, just to try it. And I would say every single post, you want to have one of these, one of the 5 that we're going to talk about, and there's kind of a 6th bonus one. Engagement is a good one to start with. See how it goes. Now, don't get too down if people don't engage on your question. You just want to go back, you want to look at, was that question easy to respond to? Was it something people are okay answering publicly? I ask questions all the time that flop and nobody responds, and that's okay. You tried it, you threw it out there, and you want to go back the next time and see if you can do it a little differently. Don't want to give up just because you're not getting any engagement. We'll talk about why here in just a minute. All right, so the 4th one was where they're going to read something. Going to be a little bit careful with this one because, again, people usually aren't scrolling LinkedIn with an infinite amount of time where they're like going to go read an article or go read something else. So you've got to have enough in the body that it's a hook. Now, I see some people do some really clever things where they've asked a question or they've brought just enough in that you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go read the rest of that article, right? So it can be done, but you just want to not overuse this one. Call to go read an article, call to go read something else, and specifically your stuff. Calling to go read somebody else's stuff, I probably wouldn't do that too much. Include as much as you can of that other person's stuff in your post, and then use one of the other engagement tools. But this would be a call to go read something that you've written or watch a longer video, and you just need enough of a hook that people are going to go do it. And then the last one is the call to sale, call to action to, do something with me. And I would just say, do not forget this one. If you don't tell people how they can do business with you, you're not doing them any favors. They're going to be reading your posts. They're going to be saying, oh yeah, Kathleen, or oh yeah, Jeff, I love your stuff. If you never tell them how to do business with you, you're missing out and they're missing out. And you're kind of being rude because they're like there. They want to do things with you and you're never telling them how. So at least once a week, once every other week, we need a clear call to action about how people work with you. Now, this can be done really well at the bottom of like a testimonial story, a client story. It doesn't have to be a post in and of itself, but at the end of that, I need to know, like, use this link to set up a free consultation or use this link to get started. We need it to be actionable and real because otherwise people don't know how to get started with you. I mean, let's face it, even if your profile is set up really well, profiles are overwhelming, the buttons aren't always in the same place, and people just don't even know sometimes to click through to your profile to see how you do business. So don't make it hard. Create a post once a week, every other week, where the call to action is really clear about how they would work with you, an event you have coming up, something you've got going on, your link to get started. Don't make them guess at how to do that, because if they're poking through your content, which they're actually more likely to do than like diving into your profile, if they're poking through your content, you want them to see that call to action every once in a while so that it's really obvious how to do business with you. So don't shy away from it. Do it, get it done. and tag me when you do it. I'd be happy to come and support you, because we need those specific calls to action or nothing's going to happen. And for our job seekers, it's kind of the same thing. They want to have some specific calls to action. Now, those probably won't happen on public posts. Those are more likely to happen in messaging, because remember, calls to action aren't just for posts, they're also for our messages, our comments. We'll talk about that in a second, and our profiles. But before we get to that, well, maybe we'll do those first, then we'll come back to the bonus call to action. So calls to action should be in your profile. I like to put them at the bottom of the profile because, again, I'm not a huge fan of the salesy stuff at the top. You do what's right for you and your client, but usually at the bottom of the about section, when I'm writing for a client, job seeker, I'll put some kind of call to action. Now, this is going to range depending on what people are doing with their profile and how they're job seeking. Are they still employed or are they not? But at the bottom of their about section, I want to have a call to action. You know, if you're a fellow sports nut, let's connect on LinkedIn, or send me a connection message. I'd love to talk about X, Y, and Z. So that can be the less job searchy sounding ones, right? It just invites people to connect with them, and it tells them kind of who they are, who you'd connect with, right? If you're a fellow nerd in the HR industry, let's connect. It can be in your client's voice. It can be very accessible and personable. It just is that invitation for people to connect. And I love to put those at the end of profiles. Now, then, of course, it can range all the way to a business person's, where it's going to be more clear about that call to action. If you want to do business with me, here's my link to get started. If you don't have that in your about section, go and figure out the right tone for you and get a call to action at the bottom of your about section, or other, somewhere in your about section. In addition to, of course, the contact information and all of the more formal places that LinkedIn puts it, I want it in that content, because a lot of people, again, they don't know how to navigate all of the buttons. They're just going to go and read your content, and you can have your email address in there. You can have whatever is comfortable for you to have in that about section. Call to actions in every message, obviously, but sometimes they might look a little different than you're thinking. So I love, there's a sales trainer, I'm going to bring him in and do some of my stuff, but he talks about how you have these conversations with people and you want to ask them a question that's easy to answer. My little friends in the background today, because it's spring break. But you want to ask a question that's easy to answer. So it can't something they've got to go research or something that feels salesy. It's got to be something that's easy to answer. So I was connecting with someone who's doing an assessment, and they just had posted that they got a new certification in an assessment. Where do you see yourself using that? Or how have you used that with teams so far? Something that's easy for them to answer and maybe fun and interesting for them to talk about. That's great, right? It brings that in to the message. And then last thing, call to action and a comment. So I teach a 3-part comment philosophy formula where we compliment the person. Thank you for bringing up that topic, great post, whatever it might be. The more specific and real and authentic that compliment can be, the better. Then content. So I'm going to share some of my values, some of my thoughts, never promoting myself, never posting my own links. That's rude. But I'm doing just being there and sharing my expertise in a way that's connective and engaging, but yet shows my brand. And then the third part, which very few people do, and even I fail to do it sometimes, is that call to action or community connection piece, where I'm going to either ask the original author a question or pull someone in to invite them into the conversation, some way that builds community, does connection, has that kind of call to action for the conversation to continue. That's my call to action in a comment, is for the conversation to continue. And when I do that, then it raises my visibility. It raises the visibility of the original author. It does all kinds of good things. So calls to action, those 5 that we've talked about, some of them are going to be more applicable in one place than the others, but you're in posts, you're in your profile, and you're in your comments, always thinking about how do you keep the conversation going? Because otherwise you might as well not go, right? It's like going to a networking event, getting a bunch of business cards and going home and sitting on them. It does nobody any good. Same thing is true if you're on LinkedIn, posting without engaging, commenting without engaging, or not having an engaging profile. All right, so our bonus, and this I saw Richard Van de Blom talking about, and I was like, well, us coaches, we do this all the time. We maybe do it too much, and that's the call to think. So sometimes you're going to drop a post that's really just a call to think. My counseling supervisor, when I was getting my counseling degree, called this spitting in your soup. And it's just that drop that, maybe you could think about this differently, or maybe you could try this new thing. And we're not asking you to comment about it. We're not asking you to engage about it necessarily, but we're just going to drop it there and make you think. Now, I'd be careful in the coaching world because we do have those powerful questions. We might overuse this call to think because it does tend to not necessarily get engagement because it's deep, right? It's maybe a little contrary. And we don't want to be contrary on to try to rile things up unless we're really ready for that. But you want to just give people something to think about. And I love that call to action. I love when Richard brought that up. I think in our space, we've got to be careful not to overuse that and also to think about how we can use the other 5 calls to action. So if you are thinking, well, wait a minute, I'd love to have these tools for myself. I'd love to build my LinkedIn audience for myself. Or maybe you'd like to help your clients do that. We have a couple of things coming up that will help you do that. One, next Thursday, we've got a session that we're doing on getting clients from LinkedIn. So careertl.com. And again, there's no www, but it's LinkedIn to clients. And we're going to be doing that next Thursday. And then we also have a session, well, not a session, but a program where we go really deep into that. And that's our digital branding strategy program. And so if you're interested in that, drop a note and let me know. And it looks like my time is up. I have a little person who is in need of my services. So I will say goodbye, but I hope you enjoy using those 5 call to action. Tag me on your posts. And if you're interested in really how to use LinkedIn to get clients, check out this LinkedIn to clients and let me know. If you drop me a note, drop me a message, I'll give you a little bonus to join us for that and our digital branding program that's coming up on April 18th. We'll see you all in next Tuesday for the Now, the New, and the Next in Careers. Thank you.